Oh, welcome to the Comics Place Book Club East of West, Volume 9 by Jonathan Hickman and Nick Dragotta.
Django, heck of an intro, bud.
I panicked.
That was really
You weren't
good.
talking and I panicked. It happens every time you don't talk. You should have been here last week, Jeff.
Sounds like everyone did absolutely fine.
Nathan put on his Jeff Figley mask and...
Well, that's good because my Jeff Figley mask is just a Nathan Butcher mask. So at some point, that's going to affect my name right here.
Sorry, I'm just thinking of this picture I saw the other day on Facebook of John Travolta going to like the grocery store, and then the caption was Nicolas Cage wearing a mask to the grocery store.
Was he buying peaches?
Probably.
Millions of peaches.
Can you all believe that we're on volume 9 of 10, like the twilight years of a book club podcast? I guess it's not a podcast, just a book club organization reading a Hickman book.
It was everything I wanted it to be. It was such a good.
It was an amazing volume.
Yeah.
And I already told Emily this, but I immediately read volume 10. So.
Oh yeah, way to go. Okay,
I got to that last page and I couldn't. I was like for 0.5 seconds, just being like, I should wait. No.
Yeah.
No.
Well done.
I'll bet Mike would have done
No
the same if I had
spoilers,
remembered to bring him volume 10 today.
No, but thank you for bringing volume 9. I kind of didn't want I kind of don't want the temptation to read 10 going into this.
Yeah,
it's in my car, so
we had
later.
We had a noon phone call of me having my first phone call of the day, being like, "Hey Django, I've got an order here from Mike for East of West 9. Should we get that to him like right now?" And Django's like, "I think he reads them maybe digitally." And we're like, "Okay, let's pack it up still."
I tried to send you guys a message as well. I was willing to come round to the shop and pick it up, but
I had one in my house, so.
Awesome.
Yeah,
thank you.
And all of this book club crew is special.
Ooh, Mike, you got the super special volume 9 from Django's house.
It's got Django's sweaty palm marks all over it.
Yeah, it's got all the mutton chop hairs in there.
They're real.
If I'd known that, like being in Bellingham today, I would have had like the opportunity. I maybe should have said something. But...
Yeah, let us know.
Special perks.
Yeah.
Sounds like people were very hot to trot on this volume.
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
Hot to trot. Are you Chuck Tingle?
I don't know who that is. I get it. Yeah, I'm there.
That's a thing for you to Google afterward.
Yeah, you Google that.
Okay, I'm in. Mike, you were saying it.
Yeah, all my kind of tepidness on volume 8 is completely gone for volume 9. Amazing volume.
Really felt like the tepidness of 8, like, was
right.
warranted in the way it was like, all right, cool, now we've got a trajectory and we're just like, it's almost when I understand the temptation to read volume 10. This was the first time where one of these, I usually like splice up my Monday workday with like an hour of work and an hour of work and an issue. And I just sat down and read all of them because like everyone felt so like I needed to be a part of it. And now it's hard to like, okay, volume 9 thoughts, because all of them just sort of predicate volume 10 thoughts. It almost feels, but
it was so good. And like I just got to that last page and just I'm reading them digitally since I'm just like I have gone hardcover so far, so digital for the singular volumes, and I just it's on the Kindle app and I just hit the button. They make it very easy.
Hard to not want to talk about that last page right off the bat.
It's just like it was going to happen. We needed to see how they all died, and just ending on all the darkness fading out of him was just
badass.
So, okay.
So good.
Can we talk about the first scene before we talk about the last scene?
I'm on board to start there.
Yes.
Yeah. What is happening with those balloons there? Are they reading the message? Is this the first time that they have like documented the message into a digital version of it, or
maybe? I know it's like I guess I hadn't thought about that. I was just thinking about it as like it's presented as Xiao Lin's first time at the tower and seeing the message?
I think that's her sister,
It
actually. I was
is.
trying to.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that was confusing.
Yeah.
Which was a
I know.
huge confusing part for me. I had to like in the third issue, I was like, wait a minute.
Because they
she
keep
had-
calling her Mao, and
Yeah. I think it was
I
who
was-
or who.
Yeah.
Mao?
It's
I went
who?
through that whole journey of being confused and then figuring it out halfway
yeah,
through.
like now
Yeah.
that you mention, I think they only have the first name in there like once, maybe.
Mhm.
Once.
So that actually now makes more sense that like they're bringing her in on it because they're about to stab her sister in the back.
And they do address her as the only daughter.
Yeah, I think
of
that might be
Emperor
also
Mao,
why I
so-
was confused. I was like, didn't
Yeah.
he have more daughters? Maybe
I
I'm
was
misremembering.
trying to
and
remember that as well.
I was
Yeah.
like reading this in a car today because I was all over our lovely state. So
She
it
was
was like in a car and then had to like look up, give directions, and then go back
Of
to
the-
reading.
of the same level of badassery of Xiaolin, though. Like, just the voice seemed consistent.
Yeah, which is also probably part of it because like I can definitely see Xiaolin telling like Shiveo to get bent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did
I like.
Yeah, please, Nathan.
I was just say I think that's maybe this culture, it being a very nurture-oriented culture with probably not a whole lot of room for nature. So I think it makes a lot of sense that two daughters just acted pretty much exactly the same.
Mhm.
I really loved like just the visual nature of the balloons going through and essentially cataloging all of this information and then offering multiple translations of it based on I can't remember exactly what they said if it was cultural differences or just like the wording
Well,
differences.
the fact that it's 3 different authors, like so much is packed in there implied that is stuff that hasn't really been referred to about the message since the first pages of the first issue.
Mhm.
It makes more sense of that Triforce symbol that we keep seeing everywhere. There are 3 different
Mhm.
translations of the one message. What I like on second panel, first page there, you have 4 balloons. You have 3 of them that are reading and 1 that's holding open all of the pages,
Oh, I didn't notice that fourth
which
balloon doing
mirrors
that.
the Triforce symbol as well. There's
Uh-huh.
3
Does anyone
triangles
remember,
and a
or
fourth.
maybe Win
Nice
has
catch.
handy, maybe it relates now, like what that little phrase of the message that we heard a lot in the first volume or two that had to do with the 3 and the 1. Am I remembering that right?
3 of the one, but they are not the one, or something to the effect
Yeah.
of like.
I wonder if
they-
that makes more sense to us now
Yeah.
yet.
See, this volume just has me wanting to go back to like first volume and re-reference everything.
That's a light task. You can do it before
We
dinner.
got
I know, I
was
briefly
thinking
considered
about
it,
it.
and
Yeah,
Yeah.
But
like
What am I thinking?
I think before we come back for volume 10, I'm gonna be rereading everything.
definitely
that-
looking at the timeline again.
I know that Andrew went back and had a whole bunch of notes on the timeline that I thought was
Atta
really
buddy.
good. And yet
did.
somehow also I just have to comment on Andrew and I have been talking a lot of Batman lately in the DMs, and yet somehow we both wore Captain America shirts today. It makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Who's Steve and who's Sam? At least they're both represented.
So I loved that the original description of the message and the way that they're reading it here. Was the original description of it that like 3 people had gotten this message and wrote it down, but it fit together, or is your interpretation that they all got the same message and then wrote their interpretation of it down? I feel like I remembered it like they maybe had like separate sentences that like fit together or something.
That
That's
was
what I
my
heard.
Yeah.
understanding because
Okay.
then I think like the very like it says like the last was Mao was it the second
Or
Mhm.
first or second, yeah.
or and he got like he completed the message.
Right. But I don't think it was completely crystal clear about that. And what the implication now from this is that they are all semantically complete. They're all, they all read as singular volumes, but the message is contained in all of them. You need
Mhm.
to read all 3 of them in order to get the full message.
Mm.
Even though you could read any one of them and believe that that's the guide to how the apocalypse
Okay.
is going to happen. And this definitely fits in as well with what we hear in the next scene from Wolf, where he says that they always, the word is always speaking to him in triple. In what's it he exactly
Oh,
says?
nice catch.
And I just
Yeah.
realized there's gonna be 3 hardcovers too. The
He
triptych.
also says
Oh,
3 different
yes.
sentences. I wonder if those are the 3 different voices.
Like in the translation there.
On that first
Behold
page.
the sun
Yeah.
behold.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the 3 different translations with just slightly different nuances to them.
Mm-hmm.
So any one of the 3 could be true, and that's essentially what Wolf says as well. He gets, feels the word moving in me, and he also gets 3 different things that he says. That's why I'm wanting to go back and check, like how many times is the message in this kind of triplicate form.
Yeah.
Something old will be rekindled, something found will be lost and found again, the blind will see and the victor will fall. Now the question now, those are 3 separate quotes. Is that 3 different versions of the message?
No,
Yeah, different portions of the same.
I think
quote.
that's just the power of 3 being written by Jonathan Hickman when you prophesize something.
I don't know,
Like-
man. I think that they could all mean the same thing.
You think so? Read them again.
Something old will be rekindled. Something found will be lost and found again. The blind will see and the victor will fall.
They could all be describing the same event.
Right.
I
But-
filtered it through like death and Xiaolin.
Well, isn't the event just the end where, isn't it that just prophesying when Babylon got lost and he's going to get lost again?
It could be.
Could be. But
So if that's the case, does that also, like, let's play out our theory, I guess is what I'm saying. So if that's what that is, do the other 2 fit?
Something old will be rekindled. So what we learn later on is that there is the resentment between war and death is based on a previous relationship, and that resentment is being rekindled within war. The blind will see and the victor will fall. See, possibly assuming that this is about
war
that
could be
specific thing.
Yeah, I mean,
Could
even
there-
in that situation, war could be the blind person because they were operating like under a preconceived notion about a relationship or something, but they didn't see, the truth, which could be a relationship in that regard, and so the blind will fall.
And
Couldn't
death,
and Mao's relationship be the rekindled as well?
True.
Well, so I mean, that whole scene, what I loved about it is who just walks in there and kind of just drops the mic of like, well, hey, subjectivity, everybody. Like the idea that we would be attempting to find like, well, here's the logical, objective truth of this completely obfuscated true thing perceived by 3 people. It's like, yeah, we're all talking about like ultimately trying to pull out a subjective interpretation of that. And it was just so awesome that she just dropped the mic and was like, are we not talking about this? Like, we're all still trying to pretend that there's one answer here, which I don't believe in one answer at any given time about anything. So
That's the first time on panel when they've sort of addressed like, what do you mean by an apocalypse? Which is what I keep wondering.
Yeah.
And it's not like they have an answer, but they're actually questioning it themselves.
If those machines read the message and captured the message, did they consume the message? Did they become the message? Did they pass
kind
that
of
on
wondering that as well.
That's a fun idea. Now we're talking about like AI singularity stuff. Like,
I don't
at what
think
point
they consumed it though. They only read it because many people,
That's true.
everyone
Agreed.
read the message, but
That's true.
no one actually just straight up ate the message. I think that's
Okay.
there's a little bit of a
Orion
difference
kind of
there.
I mean,
and
Well,
then Wolf
yes,
kind of
yes.
ate Orion. So
That's the
But
one
the com-
exception.
it got
Yeah.
like
the
double
computers
eaten.
didn't eat it.
Yeah, the
Double
computers
at
did
message.
not eat it.
double consumed like refried beans.
Oh,
Exactly, which I had
I'm
for dinner.
hungry.
Ooh.
Not alone, but it was good.
Just me and my can of refrieds.
Listen, are you
Yeah.
making fun of my 17-year-old here? Because he does that.
Okay, in high school I had a friend who did that. She'd just come over like, you got any beans? Like,
Yeah.
sure.
Yes.
Spoon.
Sometimes Eli warms him up even.
Okay, cool.
I think that the character work that was character work on Wolf, like throughout this whole volume,
Oh my gosh.
has been like a really rewarding character throughout the whole series. But just a couple scenes in this volume that had sort of more humanity than anywhere, in the last couple of volumes. Like he's just, there's a wholesomeness to the flashback scene of he and John, like love. Yeah,
Yeah.
of course you give me an animal and I'm like totally sold. But like Wolf he's a really interesting sort of like integral part of this final act.
Yeah, there's some scenes with Wolf, and maybe it was in my head, but when he was talking about the message, and maybe it's just the art, where I felt like he was kind of starting to look a bit like Orion. Was I the only one who felt like there were some scenes where he like Nathan's nodding his head, where he?
But I think it's
like,
Dragotta. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
did
it might
think
just be
that,
art.
but yeah.
It's the people like this.
Yep.
On the subject of the kind of consistency of the art, though, was anyone else just blown away by the colors and the textures in this volume? Just
Frank Martin
suddenly
is
seems to
carrying.
be way more detailed.
The cigar smoke that first shot of
Yeah.
Chamberlain being shown is
The
so
contrast.
good.
The whole
and-
first scene was the only time we've seen that specific color palette.
Yeah,
The
and like
real dark one.
the line detail in faces and
Oh.
stuff. When previously it'd been very much a sort of clean line, single colors for lots of characters,
Yeah,
including Wolf,
where
including
was-
Death. Suddenly, there's all this shading and texture.
Mike, where was that almost like Ben Oliver looking paint stuff? Like at one
I'm
point,
looking
was that?
for that. I love it. It's mostly on
Or was
War,
that?
especially.
Was that here?
Yeah.
Is that what I'm talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that was good
Just-
on Nick. You know?
Watercolor stuff, and it kind of reverts back for a bit.
Yeah. There you go, Emily.
In issue 41 to like the standard art color style, clean lines, clean shading, clean colors. But yeah, just so much more detail, and it makes everything and I don't know if it's just like they changed their method, or they changed their colorist or something, or if it's a deliberate thing to make it that now everything is getting real. Everything just felt so much
Yeah, that's kind of how it feels. Like it's all kind of like, existed on the page, but this is like we're getting down to the last of it here, and it's like there's like no like it feels like the separation between the reader and like what's happening is just getting eroded completely, and it's just like, no, you're in this.
I just did some light recon, and there was actually 3 months between issue 40 and 41.
Oh.
And about 5 weeks between 39 and 40. The 3 months between 40 and 41 is I'm just like in love with hearing people talk about coloring. I'm like, yes, this is like I love these type of conversations when we're talking about comics. But then it got me curious, and it does look like there was I'm not sure if they deliberately were putting more time between the issues or what it was, but it does look like things slowed down, which could possibly give way to more detail. Because I totally agree, especially like lighting textures are what were really speaking to me throughout this. The shot of like the horse gun through the
Oh
That
my
was
gosh.
awesome.
Yeah.
Or whenever they would leave the tent from talking to Zhao Lin, and just like the desert and the clouds coming off the hills.
Like just could feel the like grit of that plane. Sand, it gets everywhere.
It did so much for the action, I felt like, because I was really loving the action in this just in general. The intensity of everything happening with Death just kept me going through the whole thing, and the color and the action just was fantastic the whole time.
I was this book keeps doing a thing to me, and that is convincing me that a character is going to die.
Yeah.
That never happens in like a monthly superhero comic for me. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. You cut off his head. He'll be back next issue.
Yeah.
Well, it goes back to Mike's awesome quote, I think, from last volume where John died, and I think it was Mike, but someone said like, well, "Did he die? I didn't see him die," and it's like we did.
Nobody.
Die. Yeah, nobody.
Yeah.
But like I wasn't sure if Death would make it through this issue.
I'm very with you.
Yeah, like I mean, it does end with Death dying,
Mm-hmm.
just not in the present.
I was glad to see that flashback because they had alluded to it since like page 10 of number 1 or something like that. And I loved the image of all the other people standing on the hill looking down. And I've been kind of curious about what had happened this whole time.
Yeah.
Does anyone else feel just a touch though, not duped, but like you see behind the curtain a little bit when there's that dramatic irony? It's like, okay, like we've just known for 9 volumes that we were gonna find out what happened in this one scene, and that's like kind of the not the only drama to it, but like I wonder what it would be like and how the story would hold up if you read this volume, or at least just that scene first and then went back. Would you still enjoy it? Absolutely. I don't
I
know.
don't think it would hurt anything.
I think it would hurt the kind of war reveal in this volume.
Yeah.
Like you get the understanding from the very beginning and through all of the previous 8 volumes that war has issues with death and a personal thing, and you assume it's because he's betrayed the entire cause, but now you get this reveal that it's more personal than that.
Right.
And
I thought that was an awesome twist.
And I also thought it was crazy that Bell Solomon had the gall to intervene. Like
Agreed.
the balls on that man.
That was the thing.
The
That was kind
beard.
of, we've seen kind of broken Bell Solomon for so long
Yeah.
that you need to remember he was, a mover and shaker and a moving force amongst the chosen.
To
For
your
that.
point, Nathan, like nearing the end of this volume, I had the thought like, well, we're clearly near the end because we're starting to finally figure out what's going on, which is, I think, a staple of Hickman's writing. Like that's he shows you a preceding event, and then the whole story will take place as you're learning what this integral preceding event was, and it always kind of like falls together at the end. And that's when for me, I feel like I know I'm near the end of a Hickman story because I'm like, oh, I finally have a couple answers. That's not unique to Hickman. That's a whole style of writing, but
He
I
does
was
do that
impressed
certainly
that
well,
like
though.
I feel like a lot of time when there's a bunch of reveals in one issue, it kind of at some point it starts to feel cheap. But I did not feel that at all. Like I felt like it earned it. The different things are happening made sense in the world. So I was pretty impressed with that.
Can I ask a Bell Solomon question?
No. Oh,
Get it.
wait, yeah.
Can I ask a I think maybe I'm either confused or I was a little bit not understanding his arc as much, where Bell Solomon, before he was Cheveo possessed, was the guy who said, like, I've never believed in this, right?
Yeah,
That
he
was
was
his
the skeptic in the room. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Wasn't there something, like, I should have looked this up before I asked the question, but I feel like there was something when we got a little bit of his backstory here that was like, 10 years ago, he was already saying that. Yet in like volume 2 or 3, didn't we get it revealed like behind the curtains that he was the skeptic? Isn't that when we first found out that he was the skeptic, was like secret telling
I
Archibald
don't
Chamberlain?
remember
was it when he was maybe
exactly how
talking
that
to
happened.
like
I think
the sheriff or something? Because like he was with him one-on-one, and the sheriff was starting to hunt everybody down. And
I'm
Yeah.
sure like
maybe he said that.
Archibald already knew.
I think I remember it being fairly open that he was the kind of the skeptic. He was the doubting Thomas in the room.
That would certainly make it consistent. I had doubts for some reason in my head. I had thought that maybe it was the opposite, but that's good to hear that.
But I think,
Of course, it worked internally.
I think the thing, the kind of secrets between him and Chamberlain were that he was kind of actively working against the plan rather than just being completely neutral.
That Bell was, or that Chamberlain was?
Both?
know
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
Bell was
that's-
pretty
yeah.
clear with him about it. Yeah.
yeah.
And Chamberlain's doing his own thing the whole time.
Right, and then Chamberlain threw him to the wolves, and
So,
oh my god, his little speech at his niece's bedside, that was amazing.
Oh.
And she
And
just goes, oh
heartbreaking.
shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh nope, there's no redemption for this buddy. He doesn't even like the one person.
I felt that like I felt Thanos. Like that was I felt that page. It was
Yeah.
like, oh man, I was with you. That was well freaking written to like take that
Yeah.
roller coaster of showing how much you love something and then being like, but
Well, the shame only lasts a day.
Yeah.
shame only lasts a day for
And
someone
you
with
know
as
what?
little of a heart as that.
You don't collect something to have some of it.
Does Zhao Lin's war motivations, like she's working on marching through Wolf's crew because she's trying to get to Chamberlain?
Mhm.
Is it motivated entirely as a retaliatory action on his attempt on her life, or are there like economic or political reasons behind that? Was she already on the verge of doing that? I was trying to remember the full motivations for Xiaolin to be, heading towards Chamberlain. And then also, I couldn't remember exactly what Wolf's motivations would be to be stopping her outside of the message saying that he should.
I
It
think he's
was
just
muddy
rational.
on the latter, but her motivations were more that it wasn't for the attempt on her life; it was for the bombing of her people.
Right. In the scene.
So that's
okay,
why
yeah,
it's
yeah.
just all out, no reserves.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
we're coming at you like the wrath of God.
Forgot there was the two.
Was that indeed her first motivation? I'm trying to remember the big roundtable discussion that I'll never forget. The cutouts of the Endless Nation, protective shells that were in there on that last page.
Oh yeah.
Her motivations at that point weren't war based. She was just like fact finding, right?
I kind of remember asking a similar question. I feel like the answer was sort of that she was just kind of motivated by shaking things up a little bit.
Yeah, she was kind of fronting and, testing the limits and getting the gauge of her enemy before anything happened. And that kind of maybe started the ball rolling for Chamberlain feeling like, oh, I need to take her out.
Right.
I also noticed Doma Lux and the other Widowmaker. Do we know her name? I don't know. They weren't there this issue, and I feel like that might actually have something to do with what their war plans are. It might not be what it seems. Might be something sneaky, like
because I know when
army
we
might
last
be a
saw
diversion.
them, they were out in the woods saying, "Fuck this, I'm done."
Yeah, I think their
Yep.
plan was go to the Winchester, wait it all out. It's
I don't believe it. I keep looking at Win though, because I think you're the only one who's read the next one. I'm like,
Poker face.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, don't look at Win.
Poker face.
Is that a Shaun of the Dead reference?
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
dogs don't look up. Is there? I'm just curious if you guys think there's any significance to like the Horsemen's kind of body swaps.
I'm so curious about that.
Like, I don't know if it gets answered or if it's just one of those little things that they just kind of put in there to just, make things a big what if or a big wonder. But like, is it Conquest and who's the other one? Who's the green one? Famine. They have like their
switch
body
colors.
type switches. Either they switch colors or their body type
No,
switches.
I think the colors remain consistent, but yeah, their genders all flip.
Yeah.
Well, even the body,
and body
type,
type.
like
Yep.
And body type as well,
Conquest
Yeah,
and Famine, like switch body type completely.
Yeah,
And
true.
even like Death and War, Death doesn't become a female, but like War
has a
Death
lot of
have,
it.
like,
Has like
very
the
similar,
death. Yeah, the death silhouette.
and has like the same kind of the cowboy hat and the poncho or whatever it is on later on. Like they kind of have very similar looks from the past to the present, kind of swapped around, with exception of the gender swap.
The gender swap I sort of justified by like war. The end of the war that we knew was sort of betrayed by a male, like in a romantic relationship, so to speak, and it died. I could almost see like a gender swap happening as a response to like betrayal of how they identified in that previous relationship or something, like a switch or something. I mean,
But,
I could come up with different things.
Jeffrey, Nathan Butcher Figley, the best thing about Jonathan Hickman is that if this were nothing but a red herring, we'd all be very happy still. And it certainly could be. And it could be not even a red herring. It's just like, I make a lot of pure white and pure black people because it's just interesting to look at. And it's like, man, you don't even know what's gonna, I don't know. I love asking that question. I also love sitting here being like, I don't know if I know, or even if I don't find out anything worthwhile at all, like so much stands up.
And maybe it's totally nothing. The only difference between like Conquest and Famine is like their bodies get completely dismembered and destroyed, whereas Death just gets stabbed and War just gets a bullet to the head.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and the frustrating, the temptation for going on to volume 10 straight away that I completely understand is the frustration that the linchpin of all of this is why Death came back earlier in a more similar body and not as a child.
Well, did he just not
still hasn't
die?
been answered yet.
I don't think he died. I think he just had all his
This
dark
this
dark
last
dreams.
Colors
page.
came out.
Then Django, what do you think that weapon Do you just think it's based on that weapon then? Like, why is it that he didn't die? What's your best guess?
Well,
hold on.
because earlier somebody tells Bell that they can only be killed by one of theirs, right?
Right.
Yeah, but
And
didn't
he
Bell
takes one
take
of
that
their
sword?
weapons, but he's not one of them.
Well, that could be another one of these. There are 3 interpretation things. Well, let me find the quote because
To kill one of them, you'll need a weapon made by someone or something other than man. Only by
That
their
guy just-
own hand or by an instrument of their making can a child of the apocalypse die. So maybe that was a mistranslation, and he only got halfway there.
That
or
just
one of
sounds like a
3
Lord of the
possible
Rings thing where you
translations.
just need a woman to do it or something.
Yeah, I am no man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pun-based invincibility.
I was sort of
I
just
mean,
assuming there's going to be a subsequent intervention with Wolf and Crow after that moment. Was what I was thinking, because we haven't really seen how they get linked up yet. And then like we know he goes from black to white, and that sort of color dichotomy is present in those 2 characters. So I was sort of thinking that something we haven't seen them stumble across him laying there or something.
I had a Wolf thought. Now that you just mentioned his name, this isn't related to anything we were talking about, but I know Wynn was in love with him, but like I think Wolf was like a cool character, and like him and Crow were kind of about the same to me before he ate the message and became a thing. Like personal opinion, and I think that his character has been fleshed out so much since then, and it's not just that he's talking more. I take it as like he is now wrestling with a worldview and with something even bigger than he's ever been. And anybody, if they go through some sort of a religious, philosophical, whatever crisis, like they're just going to become more of something, and they're going to become more clear on their journey, or maybe more unclear on their journey to becoming clear. But I think that's why I've been interested in Wolf since his transformation.
It's definitely a thing worth kind of pointing out that it was almost one of the few disappointing things that starting reading East of West from the beginning was how much Wolf and Crow seemed to just be the Native American sidekick characters to death. The Kimasabi characters.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's completely deviated from that, and that fleshing out of the characters.
And like even Xiaolin like calls that out, like they're no longer with her husband, and she doesn't know them.
So now they're a threat. It's
Even though like from obviously like our point of view, like we'd like to believe that they aren't going to be a threat to her, but from her point of view, she's being attacked on all sides.
Yeah.
Just scrolling through some photos of the horsemen, and Will, your point of like their body things swapping is just so bizarre. I just put a picture in there of Conquest, but she's looking more like the jawless, long-haired version later. It's so bizarre. I can't wait to hear or I hope to understand some aspect of what that justification of why their bodies are progressing the way that they are, because I think it's fascinating.
And then has that monster inside.
Yeah,
that was the other thing. Yeah,
which seemed,
and that's the horseman that's Orion's mom, and gives him the monster that becomes part of him. It's very strange.
Well, that monster was summoned by Chiveo.
Yeah, we saw that in our
Chiveo
current
got
timeline.
it out of a box.
So I think that's more of a kind of pointing towards kind of everything being kind of at least syncretic with the kind of mythology being set up through Chiveo and the Endless Nation mythology, the shamanism involved there, that these horsemen may, it's all being framed in biblical terms, but they may just be entities from the Dreamlands, from the same place that Crow is from.
I like that a lot.
Hey, yo, Wen, do you want to take a moment to highlight any one particular voluptuous part of any of the something that probably none of us noticed?
I mean, you got me when I had paged away from it.
Oh my gosh. I think Dragotta had a little bit of fun drawing that one.
That perspective shot is...
It made me want bell bottoms again. I was like, bell bottoms are cool.
Yeah, made me think of Jack Kirby, just like that
Yeah.
crazy dynamic. Like the camera is at the floor at someone's heel looking up, and it's just kind of, yeah, that what a booty.
I liked
There
I
we
liked her having the missiles come out of her, and you know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
implications,
pretty
but
cool.
it definitely puts a new definition on killer thighs.
Yeah.
That scene.
But just
Oh my gosh.
cool
Wow.
extension of the idea of the embodiment of war, right? Like I just
Yeah.
create small nuclear missiles out of my body.
Do you want to see my favorite fight panel in this whole book was where Death is
Oh.
running away and shooting perfectly upside down behind him.
Yes.
But that-
like
Of
I
course
saw
he
that and I
can.
was like, that's
Just
why
that
he's Death.
entire that's it. That entire fight with the Psalms is so
Mm.
good.
I'm a
Or even
sucker.
when he
Fight scenes-
snaps the bullet up,
Oh my
Yeah.
he can
god.
snap a bullet. What? That's so
like,
cool.
I like the
It's-
details of that, and like the shell casing splintering
Agreed.
apart.
Yep.
Like-
Yep.
That scene lived up to it. For as much as I did complain a little bit about the dramatic irony of like, oh cool, we saw a scene that we knew we were going to see eventually. It was awesome, and it lived on its own super well.
I mean,
was
there's something to be said for like setting up an expectation and then like delivering on that expectation.
That's a great
I
point.
agree.
He
Well, yeah.
made it to where he had to deliver.
They set that up in the beginning too, of wanting to see the current timelines showdown of war and death, and not quite getting to that, like wanting to see that by the end of the volume, but then they gave us this instead, and it was
Oh,
still
yeah.
just
Yeah.
as satisfying.
Get that nice juicy like sexual tension, hate fight.
Well, it's like Pulp Fiction where they kill your favorite character. You know, they kill him coming out of the bathroom, and then luckily because the timeline jumps around, you get to hang out with John Travolta some more, or Nicolas Cage in a John Travolta mask. We're not really sure.
That note, I like.
I really enjoyed seeing like Hunter and was it the old president?
The old Union
Yeah.
president.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
cool seeing them again, and like I actually had to remember like, oh, that's
Right.
pretty sure that's the old Union president, because I barely remembered him, but
I thought
like
that was the
seeing the Hunter
Atlas.
de-aged.
Oh yeah. Never mind. Sorry.
Mike, what were you just gonna say?
I was about to say literally what Andrew just said.
Nice.
I was like, who's this old white guy? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right. He was important. He was important before, like, Death rolled up and killed him in the very first volume.
Yeah.
My sister asked me to say hi to everybody. I will pass the waves on to her.
I think like I was just really impressed by the conversation that Wolf and Crow had with Xiaolin in the tent. The conversation of people in power disagreeing and having it not dissolve or degrade into like something that was hostile. Like we had these two people that were clearly like, all right, I'm not gonna budge and you're clearly in my way. But I just thought like the dignity and respect with which those two parties spoke to each other. I was like, well, that's something that's not present in the world at all today.
Well, it was like a little bit of decorum, but also she was lying.
Well, she did lie
Right.
there. I mean, in that she was going to wait one day instead of several, but just,
Yeah.
I don't know. There was this feeling of like, I'm going to give you a couple of days, but if you don't, I'm going to fuck you up. But
Yeah.
there was this, I don't know, like they both seem to have an inherent respect for one another that I dug that. It's easy to write people disagreeing. I think it's harder to write people disagreeing and getting along at the same time.
What did people think about Crow being clothed? Like more clothed?
I
He's got
did
that
notice that.
new
Yeah, that was weird.
Triangular cloak thing. And
Yeah.
Yeah, like with how hot it's been lately, like I'm inclined towards the other direction.
Right.
with you.
But like, I'm wondering
So-
if that was like a diplomatic thing that
Oh, I
seems
totally.
unusual for
Yeah.
Crow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or is he
Absolutely.
transforming into more black on his body? And he's got to cover it up.
That's an interesting idea. Yeah, because like Crow is predominantly black with the white eyes, right? And then Wolf is white with the black eyes. Am I right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I wonder, it could just be a graphic design Hickman thing. I am hoping to get something out of that. I don't know if now it's time for it, or maybe later on, but I'm curious what are people hoping to get resolved? What are they hoping to get out of this final volume? Where are we at? But
Understanding of what the first volume was all about.
Yeah, I'd
I'm
say that's
just-
my primary.
So in this volume, I kept, and I read through it all like hour and a half ago, and then in the like half hour before we signed in, I was scouring and scouring the entire volume because I felt there was something that was hinting towards the kind of the upper level cosmology of all of this, which I feel like Death had said something that was implying like powers above them. Maybe I was just misreading or reading more into Bell's statement about, but you're all forgetting one thing. The message is just a guide, but what we actually served was a higher power.
Right.
Now, that now makes sense when he's saying, yeah, that higher power is dead, and it happened right in front of us. We all watched. We discovered what that means at the end of the volume. But
well, Mike, could you actually unpack that statement? So they were all fighting for something like a higher power, and we saw that higher power die. What we saw was, so are what they referring to as the higher power in that statement being the relationship between War and Death, or Death himself? Or
that's another good question. It's were they following just Death? Is he referring to all four of the Horsemen as that higher power, or
I wonder if the structure of the Horsemen is somewhat related to the triangle, where Death is like the central aspect of war, conquest, and famine. And so that's why without him, they're just kind of purposeless. They've lost their center.
Makes sense.
Well, also, like, you can't, it's hard to have a world without death, right? Like, you can have a world without war or famine, or but death needs to kind of be constant for the world to continue. So maybe he just never really dies.
Then what does our system make of the relationship between war and death that we've now realized? Are those somehow the two most important ones for some reason? Why wasn't it death and taxes? I don't know.
That's the three-dimensional triangle. That's the pyramid that he can't draw.
Floor number 2.
I like that idea, though. Like, there's the on paper surface level war and death having a relationship, but I do think that there's probably something there, like Hickman conceptually, metaphorically, like, what is the relationship? Like, is it that war precedes death? Like, war, like a relationship, war is one of the things that motivates people to have acts on one another. Like, there's there's some straws.
He's got to reveal something there, right?
Yeah.
With why, like, you don't throw in that's the reveal from the motivation of one of the main characters and then not go for it. But I don't think I have any reason to think I know where that's going. Does anyone have a little hunchy hunch besides that?
Please
that
never say that again.
Well, I mean, yeah,
I have a hunchy hunch they want to show on the
just
screen.
like a lovers quarrel thing. Like, it's got to be something a little more complicated than that.
I'll close read till the cows come home, but I can say that war is out of the four, or out of the three that aren't death, war is the one that most intentionally pursues death. Famine is just a natural occurrence from which death occurs. It isn't intentional on a human level. It just, outside of, being a side effect of human
doesn't that, man,
activity.
if you're okay,
But
so like
then
let's go with
war,
that.
yeah, so if war, is the most passionately pursuant of death, conquest doesn't want death necessarily. Conquest wants conquest. You can't conquest something
conquest
wants
something that is dead. Yeah. So war becomes the most kind of passionately pursuant of death. But death is just death. Death is a universal constant, where as Django's pointing out, the other three are just things that usually result in death.
Is there like maybe a diagram with circles and triangles that would illustrate this? Oh, there it is. It's on Jeff's arm.
You got the message on me. But no, I do think like that, just you unpacking that actually speaks to the idea why of four horsemen, death does seem to be a leader in so many regards. And it does. Yeah, it's like death, whether intentionally or non-intentionally, is sort of the byproduct of the existence of these three constants. Like, doesn't need, like, conquest doesn't immediately precipitate death or mean that it's going to, but it generally is a byproduct of all of it. And I do think war most actively causes it. But yeah, they're all routes to death.
Yeah,
So,
and I was also thinking, like, death doesn't actually need the other three. Like, when there is life, there is like all things that live eventually die. Like
I think that
that's
if we're
just a
gonna
thing.
go down this route of saying like, all right, that relation, maybe this isn't what you're saying, Mike, but if we're kind of saying like, all right, that's a good enough explanation, because I think that is an answer. Like that's interesting. But if that's a good enough explanation for the entire existence of the war and death romantic relationship, I think that would imply that this book is about the Four Horsemen, and I don't think it is.
But here's what I was kind of pointing out there though is that close reading is where you take the little details of a work, of a book, and just hyper focus on the little things for stuff that probably isn't even the author's intention in any way whatsoever, but you see how much lines up with other things. It's kind of getting a cork board and drawing crazy conspiracy lines between everything, because it results in these interesting conversations and discussions of high concepts and so on. There doesn't need to be a reveal from Hickman about any of these points
there
for
won't
it to be a valid observation.
So many of us are so deep in Grant Morrison right now that I think that's why I'm like almost pushing back on this, because if it were Grant Morrison book, there just is going to be an answer there, and you're not going to find it in volume 10. And Hickman doesn't like, I like what you said about close reading is for you. It's not necessarily that you're going to get an answer or that they actually thought of it that way. It's that you get to essentially turn any writer into its own Grant Morrison sometimes. And that's really fun to do. So that makes me like this conversation a lot. Yeah.
It's like horoscopes.
I think it's like,
agree.
the philosophical stuff you're going to debate forever, and there's going to be people that are disappointed with and there are people happy with, and everybody has their own interpretation. So for me it's really about like, how is it going to end with the characters, because I don't expect it to close every loop. I don't I expect it to be more like Lost or something like that, where they just leave you with a lot of big questions left at the end, and if you're happy with the characters. And so I'm excited, I'm interested to see what happens with Mao and what happens with Babylon and what's happened with Death. I'm much more interested personally and invested in those characters, and all the philosophical stuff for me is just kind of the background, like, oh, that's interesting, we'll be interpreting this for the next 30 years on what did this mean, what did that mean.
Well, I can see that
with every important text or message out there, right? Like anything wholly important isn't immediately objective. It's hard to point it to. That's why those things exist, which is
I'm more of a curious. Fast and Furious guy also.
Well, that's my question. Is so like, you guys were saying Lost, and kind of Andrew and Wynn and I are sort of a probably just like 2 or 3 years apart. So for me, I think of like, there's many things that have happened in fiction, but like Inception is kind of one of those early things that I can point to in my world of like, there was 2 types of people. There were people who were really unsatisfied with that ending and people who were okay with that ending.
Yeah, people who are like, oh, it's so good because it ends without you knowing if he's inside the dream or not.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I dig ambiguity in an ending, because I don't really ever like listening to anyone telling me what is true or not true. So I'm down with that. But is there anyone here who actually, to say like, toss out those examples of Lost or Inception or something, that like really doesn't like those types of endings? Because that's a totally valid camp as well. And I'm curious, Hickman and Tom King, those writers have a tendency to put you in a place where you don't have a totally coherent or super logical, like this happened feeling. And I'm curious, is there anybody who would be disappointed if they didn't get that or is hoping to get that?
There are times where I feel like I recently read Killing Joke for the first time, and I texted Will after I finished it, and I was like, so what was that last page? Because I just stared at it and I was like, not exactly sure what was happening, and I was like, what is it implying? And so I think there's times where I think ambiguity works well. I don't think I have a solid opinion on that. I don't know.
For me, it depends on how much has been invested on getting the answers to that ending. So
you
like
spoke my thoughts.
Like for me, like a great example, is it okay? Is anyone going to be bothered if I spoil the end of HBO's Watchmen here?
Oh God!
Yes.
I thought you were going to say the
I'm
end
still
of East
2
of
from the
West,
end.
and I was like, "Are you crazy? Like,
No,
is it
no,
down for me to spoil Volume 10? Is that cool for this?"
Still have not finished it.
You wouldn't
Nathan,
believe it,
not.
but
I haven't
Nathan's been like
started
2
it yet.
episodes away
Gollum
with
was
it, like
there
a
all
month.
along, and they'd get the ring to
Let's
Mount
shy
Doom.
away from Watchmen. Let's shy away from Watchmen,
Okay,
even though
so-
it has been a couple months. but-
So
Catch up,
I guess-
guys.
yeah.
I was just
Come
going to
on,
point out
come
to
on.
Andrew that with Killing Joke, you have to bear in mind as well that it's Alan Moore. Therefore, you have to read it like 5 more times and notice
Yeah,
all
you
of
know,
the
no, yeah.
details and the symmetry in order to, get as many possible interpretations out of it as possible.
Also, forget everything that's happened after it. So you're
Yeah.
only focused on that in context in that moment.
Okay,
But
so I
like
think I figured out a
for-
way to make my point without actually spoiling anything.
yeah.
But so like Watchmen, it is a tight 9 episodes. It got me very invested, but like the way that it ends in its like last 5 minutes, like it's so well set up for that moment that we don't get the complete final answer to what exactly the end result of all this chaos and misery has been, but it feels okay because the characters are going to be okay.
Right.
I think
because
for
it
me,
earned
that's
it.
my-
The piece of
Yeah.
art earned it.
yeah, for me,
As opposed to Lost, where everybody figured it out after like season 3 and
or
then
1, yeah.
I never watched any Lost, but I got kind of through the internet or whatever the impression that it just felt like they were making it up on the fly.
Yeah,
towards
like-
the
Well,
end.
that for sure.
like once I
Yeah.
figured out what the smoke monster was supposed to be, I was like, okay, why are we still doing
that was-
this?
That was what was great to me about, but to me was great about Lost was what they did with the writing and the characters. And so I would say the same thing, exact same thing for Watchmen. That final, couple minutes there, like you said perfectly, is just they kind of finished the story with the characters, but still left you with, some other questions, but not a question to the story that we just watched.
well,
Yeah,
it's the
exactly.
same thing with Inception. I didn't feel like they ever promised us that we would know.
Yeah,
And
like
with Watchmen, they
the-
don't promise us that we're going to know anything. And with,
Yeah.
like if a story is set up as we're going to tell a beginning, middle, and a solid end, then give me the goddamn ending. And I
Totally
I
agree.
didn't even really feel cheated by Lost. I thought that people were mad if they were expecting something that they had never been promised they would get.
I think that I just really like the way that both you and Win both expressed that idea, but to me it almost just falls down to this idea of like a piece of art is bigger than me. So who am I to expect that I'm going to immediately understand what the truth of it is? Like
Yeah.
who am I to expect anything of art, which is kind of the only thing I respect outside of people, but art comes from people. I don't know. Like I approach it with no expectation, but it reminds me of Hickman's House and Powers of 10. Like when we were reading it, Django, you had a very conscious, like, if this thing doesn't end as like a 12-issue story that has a beginning, middle, and end, I'm going to be bummed. And I was like, I don't think it needs to be that at all. And it was like this very, like we both had very different expectations out of it.
Well, it's the difference between like this is a limited series and this is the beginning of a longer
Yeah.
thing. And they sold it as a limited series, so I wanted that. And
Yeah.
I trust Hickman to probably tie off all of the veins in this bleeding comic book. Like I think he's gonna finish everything up, and I don't feel like we're probably anything that we feel like hasn't been addressed. I think we just didn't read the rest of the book closely enough.
And I think we'll be able to sit in this room together and come up with a meaning that we all feel kind of good about.
Yeah.
I think the thing that's benefit too is like, you trust Image to give Hickman the room to write the story that he wants to write, no matter how many issues it is. They're going to let him write it to how long he wants. HBO is going to let Watchmen is going to not, the studio is not going to interfere in that and let them make
do a second
the
season.
show right, as opposed to like, something like a Lost where you
Or
have
American
all this
Carnage
interference and
last
wanting
week.
to draw
Right.
the story out. Yeah. So there's less interference in something like this, which is what I think what makes East of West so good is that Hickman just gets to write the story that he's imagined and however many issues that happens to be, and it happens to be long in this one. But I'm
Yeah.
excited to see the conclusion for him being able to tell this entire story without too much interference.
So this is the volume that has like less issues in it, right? Like I'm not remembering
Well, this is
now.
4, next is 3.
Yeah, next has 3 issues.
3
Okay.
giant issues.
So before we get back to like, we're probably close to like final thoughts and stuff, but like, I want to point out that what made that conversation a success is that Jeff started off by saying like, what camp are you in for what you like? And that's how you talk about art. It's not a
Mhm.
discussion of two people trying to tell the other which way it should be done. It's just like, yeah, we get to have our own opinions on whether, yeah, I just love that because we could sit here and say like, I want this to have a specific ending or I want it to not. And
Mhm.
both of those things can be done so freaking well. And
You
I
could
just,
get
I
with
like
this,
the way,
or you could get with that.
thank you.
My guy.
So backtracking a little bit, so I liked the kind of conclusion we're reaching in terms of, yeah, even if the plot doesn't have this kind of final resolution, having characters have a satisfying resolution in the final volume is a good kind of
What do you want, Mike?
goal. Yeah, I'm kind of waiting for the payoff on the Bell Solomon Cheveo kind of
that's
travails.
cool.
Because yeah, they've just been kind of witnessing all of this and being bandied around by the story into
Yeah.
increasingly unfortunate places.
Yeah,
But
I love
Cheveo
hearing
is still there whispering in Bell's ear, and we've got like almost foreshadowing that Bell can step up when nobody expects it.
Ooh.
And make decisive actions.
Is he going to
and
kill
I feel
Death
like
again?
that paired with Cheveo's like knowledge of the greater cosmology, I would hope that it's going to pay off in some way. But
what one thing is everyone else anticipating? Like, what do you need? What one storyline do you want capped?
I haven't mentioned
just
Babylon yet, which I think
same.
it's definitely telegraphed, but yeah.
I just want to see Babylon interact with all the cast. I want to see
Good
how
point.
he interacts with everyone. And especially, like, I mean, in the same way that Mike was talking about Cheveo and Bell's relationship, but him and Balloon, and actually having to talk to someone more than just Death and the Horsemen, or random animals that can't talk to him. Like, how are people going to process that he has this thing on and, like, who he is? Like, there's a lot going on with Babylon, and he's not even with Death right now. So
yeah.
Specifically, I'd love to see him meet his mother.
Yes.
Exactly. That's definitely where I finished this volume. I was like, okay, all these questions have been answered, but like, we still haven't done the thing that Death was setting out to do at the very beginning of the series, which was get Babylon back to his mom.
So he can
I'm
watch
also
her
hung
die.
up on his eye situation, like all the foreshadowing about they never saw each other again. He has a little eye in his pocket. He's got the eye patch. Like, as someone pointed out a long time ago, like, I don't think he dies. I think there's something weird, metaphysical about his sight and the fact that Babylon can't see. And I don't know.
I was feeling that was the foreshadowing for the blind will see and the victor will fall as well. That could be Babylon as well.
Yeah.
I'm kind of basic, but I'm just really hoping that Death and Xiaolin see each other again, because like that early prophecy of them not seeing each other, I'm just like, is that true? I really want these two to see each other because I really like both of them.
They're like so like, so this is like me being a millennial Tumblr bubble person, but like my reaction to like rereading the early volumes where Death and Xiaolin are interacting just like kicks my shipper brain into full gear. Like, I want like 5 billion gift sets of like different song lyrics from like Hosier and like, I don't know, some other equally like
there's going to be a
Hosier
lot of Nick
and
Cave in that list.
Nick Cave. I'm like trying to think of like Florence and the Machine lyrics also. I feel like would like they'd just be like the panels over top of like some sort of moving background, but
oh no,
like,
I'm on board.
I can't do any of that, so
Django will make some gifts. Mike, I just, speaking to like the Cheveo Bell thing, I also had like a thought while reading this particular volume. It was there was some point I think where Bell was interacting maybe with Chamberlain, but also he was talking to Cheveo
the conversation in the vehicle.
I kept thinking like, so what is the role of Cheveo with Bell been? And is Bell fitting into his overall role when he is rejecting the conversation and messages that Cheveo is giving him, or does he seem to be fulfilling his role more when he is acquiescing to the ideas of Cheveo? Because I that was a big thing for me. This volume was sort of just like, yeah, why these two? Like, why these? And what is how are they fitting into this overall thing? And is it one of these, like, if you have a fear in your head, you run away from a certain number of things, but were you supposed to run away from those things? Or was I supposed to go do that's the conversation I'm always having.
It's like a dichotomy of Bell, like, it seems like he's almost been set up to be the skeptic, so he'll react a certain way from like what he's told, but in that he's like reacting in the way that the message wants.
Yeah, there's this weird causal thing.
The skeptic and the shaman, the atheist and the priest have basically been thrust together.
That's a great way of viewing it. Yeah, that's a great internal conversation model for that.
Do y'all think that Archibald got put in his place, or that he came out stronger?
You can't put Archie in his place.
Oh, from that
Archie won't go in the corner. Uncle Kentucky Fried refuses to fall.
Seriously, I liked him getting knocked down.
Just being called a coward because it's true. Yeah.
Right. Because I think the prevailing sentiment, correct me if I'm wrong, is that last page of him saying like history is written by the winners, is that I think we're supposed to think that he came out stronger than that. But I don't know that it's my interpretation, but I think I like that he got knocked down a little bit. And to me, maybe I think there was a little bit on his face in these couple panel. Oh, that's Bell. But
Bell's face when he calls him a coward isn't like you're a coward. It's you're a coward.
And I think a little bit of Archibald's face in that was like,
you're right.
Like I'm not, and it wasn't a proud like he took a little bit of a journey himself as proud man. Okay, I know I'm right here, and then it was like, okay, I'm up again, being who I am. But
like he says, like he sees himself as like he's gonna be a titan. Like
and the fact, sorry,
that was all I was gonna say. Go ahead.
But the fact that I'm looking at Cheveo because Bell is about to give up, and Cheveo just comes snarling at him, saying, "Sleep when you're dead, Solomon. Sleep when you've earned it. The chosen has chosen himself, and he should know the cost of it. Tell him what follows." That's Cheveo's strike from beyond the grave. That's he's just nudging Bell into that thrust, that
because I feel like
weakness.
Because Cheveo, like, they don't really like show too much of like how much back and forth is between them with Cheveo like in Bell's body, but like Cheveo has to know that like Bell was set up, like, so like Cheveo knows that this was all Archibald's doing to like get him thrown under the bus and killed.
To me, the statement in there that like was so profound, but I love the way that Mike said the statement of "you're a coward," but that realization, and Mike, your intonation was so great for it, but like when he says you only fight people when they're at their weakest, and it wasn't like he was criticizing it like he was on a high point. He was just like, we're down here together, man, and I'm just like this only moment where like we can speak as equals. Is like, dude, you only take out people when they're at their weakest, and like I'm at my weakest right now, but like I just liked that they seem to be speaking to each other as equals at like rock bottom, because
they're old friends.
Yeah.
So Bell knows him, and that had to come from Bell. From anybody else, it would just be, he could brush it off as a baseless accusation. But Bell knows him.
And he also felt like he
brothers
wanted to respect him, but he can't even do that. You only do this kind of embarrassing thing, man.
I think that, that might also end up being something that eventually sabotages Archibald. Like if he has a moment of second thought, that could kill him.
If he questions himself.
Right.
Yeah.
Remember the eye.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah.
One for questions, but the questions lead to death.
Yeah.
Was it the message or the eye that said that they wouldn't see each other anymore?
I believe it was the message.
It was the message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that message is full of shit anyway. Hey, and Django was just talking about eventually. He said, like, what if Chamberlain eventually? And we've only got 3 issues left. So I love that we're talking about eventualities in the final, finishing stretch of this volume. I seriously cannot wait to talk to everybody about it. But that's 2 weeks from now. And next week is 1
if I'm
week.
going to read it right after this.
Yeah.
Or wait
Do
till before we talk
it.
about it.
Do
So,
it.
so Django and I were
First
like,
big
we had
issue.
this conversation today of I was kind of like, I could just do East of West 10 right now. We do have a couple other people that have participated in these Zoom call book clubs. And I do think after we finish East of West 10, we'll probably take a couple weeks off as we figure out exactly what scheduling and the next books are going to be. So Django brought up the really good point that it would be really nice if we had one more regularly scheduled book club where we could get a couple other voices in here so that like people who have been here don't get shut off, as the thing takes a break. So I do think it would be nice to do 1 week between now and East of West 10 to do a kind of standalone story. Django and I had a small message while we were having this conversation of a couple books that we have that we could get out that we like a lot.
Walking Dead Omnibus Volume 1 is the clear winner.
Super funny. And we narrowed it down to 2, and I'm hesitant to just like make a decision.
I've not heard of that one.
But it's it's the one that came right before Kieran Gillen's 3 about the
yeah. Cool. Okay.
But I'm not sure how many people here have read The New World by Alice Cott from Image. It was a 4-issue series.
I have not read it.
I think this is where we say that's the next one. You're welcome.
It's got
like
some of the
Alice
most incredible art by an artist named Trad Moore, who did Strange Life of Luther
That's why I
Strode.
was, yeah.
Silver
couple
Surfer
other
Black.
things. Silver Surfer Black.
Silver
yeah.
Surfer Black.
No one's art is quite like their art. But then
Yeah.
Alice Cott, who is just an interesting creator that had a new book come out this week called Lost Soldiers that we talked about on the podcast that we loved, the New World. I think it's a manageable one. It's just 4 issues as opposed to like the 8 or 10 ones we've done with like Day Tripper.
It's 4 big issues, but
They're
yeah.
Is that the guy?
oversized
Is that the
issues.
is that the guy that you said stood up Justin?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, he stood our boy Justin up good on his birthday. But New World is a really interesting sci-fi social look at culture brought into the future a little bit, and it's got reality TV culture, and it's kind of a it came out I think just not too long after Trump had been elected. There's a big wall in it.
Yeah.
But
it did some things that I had never seen in a comic.
It's not
Which
as
what I
overtly
like to hear.
political as American Carnage, but
yeah.
it is a very progressive work. I
It
think.
doesn't take much to be not as overtly political as American Carnage.
Yeah, I'm sorry to miss
There's
that.
literally
really
a politician in there.
would love to hear.
So
all of your
I'm
thoughts on that.
inclined by
Interesting.
that. What was the other one you were thinking about?
The other one we were thinking is like a little bit more popcorny, and it was Mark Miller's The Magic Order, which is a 4-issue miniseries that is gorgeous.
Couple years ago.
and, a
That
year and a
one's like
half ago.
2018, like
Yeah.
first half of 2018.
Yeah. It's going to be a Netflix show before too long. The art is
Eventually.
gorgeous. Django, the only other one on his list would have been Little Bird. That one, however, is a hardcover. So it's a little bit more of like a, hey, does everyone want to spend like $30 on a book?
Isn't Little Bird the one they said they weren't gonna collect?
They
They
sure
said they
did.
wouldn't
said
do a
they
trade
were-
paperback.
They just said they were
About to
going to
have the
wait on the
paperback
trade.
out in a
Oh,
couple
okay.
weeks.
Did
I
we
think
lose
the orders?
No,
for.
no.
Yeah, Little Bird's $30. So.
Yeah, I guess like New Order sounds great. Like it sounds like a very awesome book. Like I mean, there is a little bit of an inclination to maybe do a popcorny book before we
That's what I
dive
was
into
thinking.
the last volume. But
New World is pretty popcorny also. Like it's
yeah, like it's only
it's
4
an
issues,
adventure.
Yeah.
and
4
like
issues,
from what
and
I
it sounds
remember
like
of
it's got
it,
some crunch.
like
It
Yeah.
does. right,
yeah. It's
think-
it's the spicy salsa instead of the mild salsa with chips.
Yes.
And hearing about how well last week's book club went, I think that New World is a good combination of maybe some elements of American Carnage in a much more popcorny flavor and not quite so heavy. So I would love
more
to do that. I also-
1984, less Donald Trump.
yeah, I would love to get in. Yeah, some of the other voices that have been here for Gideon Falls and some other things, just so that we can kind of wrap this up in a 20-week cohesive way. 20 weeks, everybody! Wowza! It was
Oh
impressive.
my
We're
gosh.
18 now, but
I
that's-
love that we get to say that is that, like that we did a 20-week book club, and especially for like Django and Jeff, like good on you for doing that too.
Oh,
for
no.
for like us saying that we accomplished something, I think that's going to be one of the most important parts to like calling this a success and then allowing for success in the future is to say like when we finish volume 10 to be like we did it. And then
the success for me is hearing that anyone is texting each other after this has happened while they're reading books or sending messages to the shop as you guys have done. Like that is that's the massive success for me.
The success for me is that I've finally I'm one room away from having a full map of Nathan Butcher's house.
I was hoping that Nathan would share his link on where he got that hammock from, so we could all join him next time.
Oh, it's a good one.
Hammock.
All right, I'm
I
gonna
think
actually.
it's a good pandemic choice.
All right, can I do a thing here that I meant to do the last time I wore this shirt? Are you ready for this?
Hammock?
Okay, so
Okay.
these are Marvel characters. We all know these characters. Okay, it's pretty easy. Who the ever-loving crap is this woman right over here in the
Scarlet
blue
Witch.
Scarlet
mask?
Witch.
In
Scarlet
front
Witch
of
in
Blue
front
Mask.
of Scarlet
The
Witch?
Front
In
Scarlet
the
Mask
person in
is
front of Scarlet Witch?
Quasar?
Okay.
Is it
I was gonna
Quasar?
say it does
And
like
if it
that would be my guess. I mean, it's not like if you could take a picture with better lighting, because right now it's like
And-
you
I
are
don't
in
have my glasses
shadow and
on.
you're being lit by a camera
why
phone.
is it? But either way, why is it somebody that like a shirt that is at
Nobody can-
Target
Well,
that
to be
nobody
fair,
knows who that is?
You've got some strong like West Coast Avenger vibes on that shirt. Like we've got
I was gonna
Hercules.
say, yeah.
It's from
Um,
Target.
Right. But it's probably
I
a
got
piece of
one
like
from
Sal
Target that has
Buscema
like
art.
She-Hulk on it, so and that
Nothing-
was
It's good
pre her
superhero shirts,
series.
frankly.
Yeah.
I don't
think it's
know.
with my
Yeah, like I'm
random-
inclined to guess like that's maybe Quasar. Also, it kind of looks like one of the really old Black Widow costumes.
Sure.
Oh.
Mike, what were
Kind
you
of.
saying?
It's a little hard to see though.
Weird.
Yeah,
you guys
I
are all
have-
wonderful.
Yeah. I have the dilemma of my big every Spider-Man character and villain t-shirt, and right at the back next to Green Goblin is either Green Goblin's pumpkin bomb or Jack-o'-lantern. I don't know.
Mike, isn't
They
that
might be
is
the
that your
same.
purple shirt? You have a dope
I have
purple Spider-Man
the
shirt.
purple Spider-Man one is one with like an old,
I love it.
it's like Spider-Man ready to kill the Green Goblin one.
Can I make a request that you wear that shirt next Monday? As our if it's convenient, wear it because I love purple.
I love purple as well. It's my favorite color. But
Okay, everybody. Well,
Sounds like New World.
New
for
World
next
by
week.
Should
Alice
we
Cobb.
ask
Yeah,
Rhett
it is.
or whoever else would be coming? Should we ask them? Is that worth it? Can we ask them and get a turnaround fast enough?
I'll
Or should we just
message
say it?
everybody. I'll message everybody, and hopefully we have enough copies. I think we may order some tomorrow.
Well, I have dibs. It's literally in my cart right now.
Nice. Place your orders, everybody. And and it'd be cool. Like I know Justin loved the book, Roman loved the book. We can probably get some of the other folks from the shop. I think Colette loved the book, so
I'll read the issues. I don't need the trade.
Well, and if we get Roman in here, then we'll certainly find out who this is.
yeah, that's true. Make sure he would certainly know. All right, everybody. Thank you once again from the bottom of my heart for being here. You're all amazing. We'll
Bye,
see you next
friends.
week, and then we'll see you the following week for the cap off of the whole thing.
See ya.
Bye,
Yeah,
everyone.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Eastest of West.
Nearly.